Well, good day and welcome to another episode of Solutionaries. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, where we like to have a little bit of some casual discourse with various luminaries, educators, and teachers from all the various aspects of regenerative culture. It can be arts and culture, spirituality, green energy, peace and justice, alternative economics, and energy equity. And I have to say the planets have kind of aligned today, and deeply honored to have our next guest on the show. But I do want to welcome everyone. And with that, I'd like to introduce our educator, guru of the GAIA Matrix, publisher, writer. He does so many things I can't even begin to tell you, but he'll talk more about that. And I'm broadcasting from Crestone, Colorado, a place which is a very pertinent area in the Arc of Antero book, also published by our next presenter. I want to welcome to Solutionaries, Peter Champoux. So welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Really great to be here.
Great. And it's good to reconnect. We met years ago when I was living in New England and Massachusetts. And
I think that was the last time we talked, was in that interview at WMUA. I think it was for Earth Day or World Peace and Prayer Day or something. Or
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, WMUA and UMass Radio. And so a few moons have passed since we last talked. And I know you're in a different part of the world right now. So just before we start, can you talk a little bit about yourself, your work, and again, Arc of Antero, GAIA Matrix? You have a huge body of work that you've done, and just talk a little bit about, unraveling the mystique of Peter Champoux and the work you do.
I'll give it a try here. It's been quite an adventure. I guess it's started practically day one. My name came from all the rock that was taken out of our family foundation. So they called me Peter. And I've been involved with the earth, since day one, if you will. But jumping forward, I used all the synthesis of study that I had of the cultural use of stone, of sacred geometry, of the techniques of the Knights Templar, if you will, and in the construction of cathedrals. I was also a stonemason for 25 years, where I feel I was downloaded a great deal of this information from the rock itself. Kind of a far out thing to say, but I was splitting open rocks as a stonemason. Dr. Steiner spoke of there being this release of gnomes of knowledge whenever you split a rock open. So I split up with thousands of rocks, and eventually I started to look at the sacred geometry of the planet itself. And in looking at that, I found what I called GAIA Matrix at the center of the North American tectonic plate, which is in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts. The geographic center is out in Minnesota somewhere, but the geologic center, that is the center of the North American tectonic plate, is Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts. And there was this array, this sacred geometric array that was keyed off by the mountains of New Hampshire and Vermont that generated very tight geometry, mother geometry, if you will, that you could generate many other geometric forms out of. But I wrote a whole book called GAIA Matrix on that. And when I first discovered, I thought, oh, this is cool. All right, I'll end there, But it just kept expanding and expanding. And finally it became a continental study. And I started finding that there are all these rings everywhere on the planet. I identified this arcing ring centered on Shelburne Falls as the continent, which you can see in the arc of Mexico, California. That radius that is generated by that is centered on Shelburne Falls. And then if you carry it around, it goes over into Iceland and the Azores and comes back around into Panama and back up around again through California, up the Acadian and Sierra Nevadas and such. So I'm kind of, I guess you'd call me a spiritual geographer. I also use the term Gaiagrapher, Gaia, study of the living earth is what I do, if you will. So I've also written a couple other books and innumerable articles on the subject.
Did you hear, Peter, not to interrupt, did you just hear when you said the living earth? Did you hear the big clap of thunder?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Wow.
no, I did
So
not.
that
But
sent chills up my spine. I'm sure she'll be
uh,
speaking more.
yeah. I work with the mother. She responds often. So yeah, so I wrote two books. Two other books. It's kind of addendums, I guess, if you will, to GAIA Matrix. And one was called The Arc of Ontario, which focused on the Sangre de Cristo Valley of America's sacred landscape. Yeah, and that's one of the earth rings that's centered on Shiprock, New Mexico, and it's the rock with wings. So often these circulinear forms that I found that have at the center these indigenous sacred sites. So it appears that ceremony was often done at these places, I feel, as a way of world maintenance. And so I have this sense that we should, it should be a profession for Native people to continue on this work to maintain the world. I think that the earth is suffering because we don't have enough ceremonies happening at sacred sites. So
Well, it's very interesting that you say that because in 1987, I was on my way to, and this is before I lived in Massachusetts. I grew up in Connecticut, but I was on my way to Telluride, Colorado, to perform with Baba Olatunji, who's one of the first drummers from Africa that was here in the U.S. He performed at the World's Fair in 1952. But I was going to Harmonic Convergence in Telluride, where it was Olatunji and the Grateful Dead were doing a big performance.
Oh yeah, 87, yeah.
Yeah, and on the way, I stopped at Old Arabi, which is the oldest continuously settled village in North America of the Hopi Indians, and it was right during the time of their snake dance, which is an ancient pre-Columbian ceremony that they do. Anyways, it really changed my life, realizing that there's an ancient culture here still existent in North America, and a lot of them are the same families in the same villages doing the same songs, the same rhythms, and the same dances for thousands of years. And like you said, part of the Hopi culture is that they say that their songs, their ceremonies, and dances, especially in this area of the Four Corners and the Grand Canyon and Shiprock and this sacred Four Corners area, actually helps to keep the world in balance, both magnetically and spiritually. So again, what you're saying, there's so much rich mythology around this concept of the importance of these frequencies and these magnetic, I guess we could say, ley lines and dragon lines and grid lines and various things.
Yeah, it really plays out. The whole Hopi snake dance plays out in geomantic patterns that emerge out of the landscape in the form of cultural and natural sequences across the land. So you have the Second Mesa there in Hopi land doing this snake dance, and what they're doing is drawing in the water kachinas that are form over the top of San Francisco peaks, the sacred peaks there every summer during the monsoon, and it draws the water in order to have to water at a very necessary time their corn crops. So the ceremony is very important to their survival, and it's all part of this world system. So that was my process. So I'm looking at, okay, here's this snake dance, and they're drawing energy from this other place. So to me, that's an alignment. And what I did was I draw a line, a geophysical line between those two sites, and then extended it. And I found that it had many other native sacred sites along its length. One of them being Shiprock, another one in Crestone, Colorado, just on the north end of town. And yeah, there we go. Yeah, so the Kachina Lay going across there is what I call it, because the Kachinas travel this path, and it really extends from one side of the continent to the other, from Tecate, or Tecate Peak, or it's also called Cuchama Peak, down by San Diego at the border of California, Mexico, right down there, and then it goes up through, Ottawa and Montreal. So it hits a lot of these volcanic vents. So I call them ley lines, LEI, in homage to Pele. With the, when you go to Hawaii, you get this ley. So it's like this flowering along this length of the planet, and they quite often encircle the entire planet. This particular one, though, seems to just go up to Nova Scotia via Mount Katahdin, Maine, which is the home of the beautiful stone people, according to the local native legends there. So all along this line, you find all these indigenous cultural events, giants who were turned into stone, and this type of thing. The mythology of native consciousness across the land. So we did some work on that, activating that ley a few years back. A friend of mine and myself, we did a tour and travel. So, yeah.
And I know a lot of people now talk about like the idea of, I know there's the word geometria, which, like, if you go to places like Chichen Itza or various sacred sites and pyramids, how there's the mathematics, the architecture, the astrology, the mythology, all these things are kind of woven into these structures to tell a story. But there's also what, the idea of gematria. Is this very aligned with the idea, or of gematria? Geomancy, for people who might have heard those words. What's the connection? And there is a science to this. This isn't something that you just made up per se, right?
Right. I'm building on the shoulders of giants, of course, and gematria is the study of number and the language of number. What does number mean, and what kind of power does number carry? And that's all involved with this. I often look at what the angle of a particular ley line is, and that number compared to north is, has a conversation. So. You mentioned, Teotihuacan. No, you didn't mention that, but Teotihuacan, for instance, what people talk about the place a lot, but in the geometry of the place, the Avenue of the Dead is at 23.5-degree angle to north, which is the angle of the ecliptic. So the whole ritual and ceremony that went on there at Teotihuacan down in Mexico City was about holding the earth in place. It was, that world maintenance thing. So whenever you see that ecliptic angle implicit to a sacred site, it's one of those world maintenance sites.
And places like
Serpent Mound as well has the same thing. Chichen Itza, I haven't really given that a good study yet. But
so I think what's interesting is just hearing you talk, and we'll get into this later in the conversation. I mean, you're such an amazing wealth of knowledge, and it's nice if we can educate and make people aware. Okay, this is powerful knowledge. It's not just information, but it's knowledge, and it's ancient wisdom that can help us to understand contemporary society. But I think what's interesting is actually NASA's been tracking over the last few years that actually the magnetic poles, not the actual planet, but the electromagnetic poles of the planet seem to be moving, and that this has potentially happened throughout history, and the implications as we continue to build out civilization and dams and changing waterways and constructing things and cities, that we're having, I would assume we're having a pretty profound effect on these ley lines and these magnetic lines that are part of this planetary Gaia matrix and balance. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, there seems to be a cycle that the Earth goes through, and we're right in the middle of one of them, and that's the geologic record shows that the magnetic field has been everywhere on the planet, and it's like Dr. Hapgood, Beth Hapgood's brother or cousin or something, a native of Massachusetts. He pointed out that everywhere on the planet you have limestone, and the only place that limestone can be developed is if it's along the coral reef of the equator. So that indicates the equator, everywhere you find the lime, it's everywhere, so that indicates a continual movement. I think that's part of the process of keeping the Earth's magnetic field vital and protective of us. Periodically, it gets weakened, and you see this in geologic record as well, where over time, over this like 24,000 year cycle, it's Yuga, if you will, the magnetic field gradually starts to weaken and blend together. So, like if the north is orange and the black is or south is blue, then all those colors tend to mesh and kind of get weakened and mixed together just before a pole shift. And when the pole shift happens, then you get this clear demarcation at the equator of a clear north-south charge, and that renews it. So we get a pole shift, and when the pole shifts, what I found as a stonemason is that when you put rock under intense pressure to crack it, for instance, it increases its electrical charge. So when the Earth shifts, the Earth has to adjust, and that adjustment moves these plates, and the plates generate piezoelectric energy, which help in the restoration of the magnetic field, so that we are protected again from. So boy, I'm if I make it through it, I'm really looking forward to the Earth when it has a very well-defined magnetic signature.
Well,
I think the whole atmosphere will be changed. The whole energetic form of the planet will be changed.
Well, interestingly enough, that's kind of part of the work that I think brought me out to Crestone. And again, I want to share that I've been reading your book, Arc of Antero, and just fascinating. I find right now the Four Corners to be a very grounded area. I mean, all summer long, we've been getting rain almost daily here in Crestone. My colleague and I have literally been drinking out of the creeks as the waters come out of the mountain. It's been very green, and of course, part of this planetary changing of climate, whether it's natural or human-made or a combination of both, and not to get into the weeds of the political agendas and perspectives around that. I'm really enjoying living. I mean, I'm up at a 99,000 foot high desert plateau. It used to be an inland ocean. And of course, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. I'm really enjoying it. And of course, over the last few weeks, I used to be much more proactive at when you could make a living as a journalist, speaking the truth about things, or at least showing other sides of the story besides what we tend to get from corporate media. But over the last few months, watching the flooding in London and Paris, watching what's happening with the changing of droughts and not only the raising of sea levels, but just, I mean, as the Hopis say, we're in this time of incredible earth changes, and that the earth has kind of gotten out of balance, and there is this natural balance coming back. But could you talk a little bit, because I'm really, and I look forward to having more discourse potentially in the future. And again, I'm a huge fan of your work, and I just really appreciate what you're bringing out and enlightening people about. But could you talk a little bit about the Arc of Antero? Because I think it's fascinating, not only because I'm here, but this area, we have 21 spiritual centers, Tibetans and Shinto and indigenous. It was the Bloodless Valley. It was a place of peace. We have, I think it's the second largest underground water aquifer in the country. I mean, there's so many things here. It's Great Sand Dunes National Monument, the Black Canyon, which goes into the Rio Grande, which goes into the Colorado River. But if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes and share a little bit about this Arc of Antero. And I even see a page in here where you have the Hopi two-horn priest, and you also have an image of the I think it's the Virgin of Guadalupe and the Sun Kachina. So I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, it's quite a mouthful here. Let's see. Read the book. But it's actually available on PDF now. It's no longer in print, but I have it available as a ebook. Yeah, that was prompted by that book was all prompted by this Kathleen Smith. She wanted to create a light center there near Blanca Peak. And Blanca Peak is the eastern door, the eastern sacred mountain of the Navajo people. And beautiful, the vortexing mountain that is kind of right there in the Sangre de Cristos. So the arc that's comes off of that up towards Crestone, it's a curvilinear form, and that I look for that in the landscape, a curving form, and to reference a center, and the center that's referenced by that curvilinear Sangre de Cristo block fault, this vertical, most faults are at an angle, and the Sangre de Cristos are perfectly straight up and down. So there's a direct conduit to center Earth, and the alignment of the mountains going straight up make for those two sacred directions of zenith and nadir. So so like the Delphi prophetess who hung out over that cliff, this rock cleft. It's like the energies of the earth come up there and help with the illumination and inspiration that we find in Cresto. But that arc, having a place name, given it the blood of Christ, names have power, and that energy that was placed there by that name is, it's big.
And it was amazing because last night at sunset, we got that blood
Yeah,
orange color on the mountains when the sun has
Yeah.
just the right kind of amount of angle and cloud layer and stuff. So
So that's that ring form that's marked in the land by that goes up into Aspen, Colorado. So all that gold, silver, and all that transmissive energy that you have, gold according to the Kogi, was what was used by the Inca to connect the Inca spiritually with the higher dimensions. It wasn't something about money. It was a spiritual context. So when you got all that gold and silver and copper and all these other minerals, it speaks to a spiritual connectivity that can be enabled. So that ring form is really the Colorado Plateau. That it defines, and it goes over to the Grand Canyon, and the Grand Canyon forms one of the arcs on it.
of course, Sedona. Everyone knows Sedona as a place of so many earth vortexes, and I think it's interesting because Sedona backwards spells anode, which is the part of a battery that conducts electricity, and of course, there's so many minerals there. As soon as people get there, their hair kind of stands up on end like, wow. They feel that magnetic earth energy.
Yeah. There's a whole dynamism that's created by the mesas around, but they're kind of a root form, if you will, of the Sangre de Cristos, or not the Sangre, the San Francisco peaks. The sacred Kachina peaks. So you have the peaks up here, and you have Sedona down here, and that's kind of the root of that mountain that comes out. So we have the energies of that volcano that are bringing up deep energies and waters. But Sedona is kind of like almost like the underworld, if you will, of vortexes, underground vortexes are being expressed through these columns of the mesas have it's like a electric dielectric. The center are granite, and then they have these sandstone cones around them, all made of, they're red. So there's a lot of iron in the rock. So
Right.
it has all this electrical conversation going on there that would generate piezoelectric energies like like one feels when you're in Sedona. But that area is the where the arc of this Sangre de Cristo circle goes to, is down into Sedona and the San Francisco Peaks. It's one of the, and right in that area you have like multiple earth rings that all converge. Another one is centered on the Grand Tetons, and I have a whole, I have this whole study. Really, I've been working on doing the whole planet up in this way, where I've identified all these earth rings that are all over the planet. Most of them centered on indigenous sacred sites, if you will. And but yeah, so that's that.
Yep.
So that valley, that is the San Luis Valley, is in the shape of a Vesica Pisces. The prayerful hands, the vaginal space, it's just kind of the start of the seed of life, geometric. So you have that shape form that mimics the when you look at the topography of this San Luis Valley, it looks like the Virgin of Guadalupe, and the edge form, the mountains, how they it's like the radiance of that of the Virgin of Guadalupe image. So and that's that was part of the conversation. There we go. Right. So and yeah, her center matches what's called Center Colorado. It's the center of the San Luis Valley.
Wow.
They have all that water there. Water is always part of the sacred sites. It's one of my premises is that water is the progenitor of all sacred geometry and all form. So for instance, the nebula, Orion's belt, the middle star is a nebula, and that's producing 60 oceans a day out of
Wow.
that. So nebula just generates water. And when water comes together, wants to come together and bond, and then, then dust collects, and then eventually you get a solar system out of that. So with us, we, for instance, Earth has this layer called the ringwoodite layer between the upper and lower mantle boundaries, about 200 to 400 miles down, and that's full of water. There's 4 oceans of water in there, and all that water is nebula water. It was there. It was formed when it was kind of captured when our solar system was in nebula, and every time that there's a volcano, there's a vent that's generated to bring that water up to surface. So the Sangre de Cristo waters are of that primary water source because they're heated. So the water that's underneath Sangre de Cristo is like this nebula water. I mean, this stuff that never came, it's original water. It's never been on the surface before.
It's incredible too, because I know within a couple hours from me, there's literally a dozen hot springs.
Yeah.
Maybe I should stop talking about Crestone area, because we'll get a huge influx of of tourism and people coming here, and we kind of like the fact that it's quiet and peaceful. And it's interesting because as you're talking, it's like in my mind, I'm visualizing from the micro to the macro, this relationship between this GAIA matrix. And of course, the word even Gaia is enticing. I think the person who kind of brought that word out to the forefront, I think he actually passed away recently, but his teachings about that the earth is an actual living organism, and then the relationship of different parts of the earth and these ley lines. And then as you're talking, even as it goes out into the universe and the galaxy, that there are these parallel relationships of these locations. It's really fascinating. It's not just one place, but the symbiotic relationship of these places to each other and how they interact.
Yeah. I mean, planets all communicate with one another. I've coined this thing called Earth rings, and what I found is that these circular forms that are I'm finding on the Earth are I call Earth rings, and they appear to be like bubbles that come up to the surface, like out in Yellowstone. You get those mud bubbles that come up and they create these radial forms in the water mud there. So it's a similar thing. And one of the pieces of looking at Earth energy vortexes, we found that it had a 1:5 ratio between the outer ring and the inner core of the Earth energy vortex. And I noticed that it was very similar to what the Earth's inner geometry is, the Earth's inner core and
Wow.
and mantle area, or not mantle, membrane, the lithosphere. So I explored that geometrically and found that it was an enneagram, a nine geometry where there you can make 4 polygons out of a 9-pointed star, and like if you connect 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, you end up with the mantle lithosphere boundary, and that's the same size as Venus. And if you bump it down to 1 to 3 to the kind of the next polygon, that encompasses the ringwoodite layer, and then you bump it down, every third one, you end up with this encompassing the outer core of the planet, and then the inner core is I'm sorry, let's see, it's
Now, is this related to the Fibonacci spiral? Because I know there are these.
No, it's a different ratio.
Okay.
So we seem to have this relationship with various, like the outer core of the planet is the same size as Mars. The inner core is the same size as Pluto, or very close to the moon. So
Wow.
the resonant forms that are within the planet itself are in a dimensional resonance with the rest of the solar system. Like Jupiter, for instance, its inner core is the same size as the Earth. So,
Wow.
it has,
Wow.
that's why
Sir,
astrology works, I guess.
you are a mind-blowing pioneer of this work that you're doing. It's fascinating because again, I mean, people can conceptualize it or talk about it, but you've actually done the research and the math.
Yeah,
And
it's everything's connected. It's really quite wonderful. So these Earth rings get projected onto the surface. They get, the Earth itself projects its energy up to the surface, and it expresses itself like it is. So Earth energy vortex is expressed like the Earth itself, the geometry of the Earth, and these large Earth rings similarly express in that way. So places like the Bermuda Triangle are the same size as the Earth's inner core, and that inner core ring size is probably the one that's most replicated around the planet. And one of them is centered on the Grand Tetons and goes out to Sedona and makes this big arc that was kind of used to simmer down the Yellowstone volcano. It was showing signs of ready to blow, and a Blue Thunder LeBeau, Bravado LeBeau, he was a Shoshone singer. He got together a bunch of people in 2004 and did a bunch of ley line work on this 1,400-mile wide Earth ring, and he had people all around it doing this ceremony, and the caldera bulge that was coming up through Lake Yellowstone just went, just chilled right out overnight after doing this ceremony. And it's just this work, you can use these geometries to bring water in, because they're often because water informs the planet's geometry. You can use these large scale geometries to bring in water, for instance. So doing ceremony at the center of these Earth rings. We've actually done that, where created a flood in LA at one point when we were kind of doing this Sorcerer's Apprentice dance.
Wow. So that was you.
That
Okay.
was us. Yeah, that was back in '05. I helped Bravado create this geometry around Big Bear Lake, California, where it was dried out and the wells were going dry, the trees were drying up, and so we created this 250-mile wide ring and stationed 8 people in this geometric around that center. And next day it started to rain in LA and didn't let up for 6 weeks straight and flooded out the city.
As you might be able to see, it's starting to pour.
Yeah, I've been working on that. We're trying to get the water. We're trying to get the water table back up again, and it would be nice to get some sponsorship from the power companies or farmers or something like that. The big agri conglomerates to actually, work these geomantic rings to, bring balance back to the earth. Bring waters back. We see Europe just, Europe is an earth ring that's centered on the Ukraine. So when you have this emotion of war, water doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So we just have this this drought that's going on there in Europe. Like the Po River and the Danube and the Lorries River, and it's crazy.
All the way out to China. I saw some videos recently of the Yangtze River where they're finding these ancient Buddhist shrines carved in the rocks in the basin of the river, and now that it's dried up, they're being exposed. And some of these are like, well over 1,000 years old. I saw something about in Mississippi, Missouri, they were finding dinosaur tracks now in the beds of these dried up rivers. And it's fascinating because I worked for a little bit with this Cherokee medicine man called Rolling Thunder. And he said in this time of the great earth changes, ancient things will be coming out of the earth and making themselves known. And I'm thinking, like, does that mean Bigfoot? Does that mean like we're going to find alien ships buried in the Arctic ice? Like, what exactly do you mean? But it is fascinating because you can see how these things are true. And hopefully they're allowing people to kind of think outside of the limited Euro-colonial matrix that has kind of like had a grip on things. And we're starting to look at things in a more indigenous way, more open-minded. And we're starting to realize, like, yeah, all these things are interconnected. And like you said, Steiner, our connection to nature and to the elementals, these are such an essential part of our life and birthright here on planet Earth, Mama Gaia. So,
amen.
I know we could go on for a long time, and but I want to just, as we get towards the end, I'd love to know some of the titles of some of the books you've written, and if people who see this might be interested, or even like a website where they can go to find out more about your work. And I do want to say I'm really excited about reconnecting and helping to champion. This piece that you carry is so important and vital, and I think people are ready to.
Yeah, I think it is too. And it's kind of like I've kind of been in the background. I think I have a great contribution to make, and I'd really like to get it out there. And I'm working, trying to get out the Earth Rings Encyclopedia. That's kind of like my what's in the back burner to get this all down, make a story out of it. But yeah, GAIA Matrix covers New England and briefly North America. Arc of Ontario is focused on the Sangre de Cristo Valley, but it has to do with all the dynamics around the Front Range of Colorado and the various ley lines that intersect the Colorado Plateau and Crestone. And the third book is called Moon Rivers, and that sprung out of this realization that the radius that's marked by the Mississippi River is the same as the moon. the length of the Nile is the same diameter as the moon. And all these major rivers that are around the planet are on the 30th parallel. So you have the Nile Delta is on the 30th. The Tigris Euphrates Delta is on the 30th. The Colorado River Delta is on the 30th. The Yangtze is on the 30th. The Ganges headwater is on the 30th. So you have these, in our own, looking at this kind of metaphor of and fractality of things. Where does all the blood come to? It comes to our heart. So where does all the water come to? It comes to the 30th parallel. So I look at that as like a planetary heart chakra, well, and so that Moon Rivers has that conversation around that. So and there's other also part of that conversation in that book is looking at other chakra systems of the planet and the solar plexus of the planet. I relate to the 19.5 degree latitude, which is Hawaii, Mexico City, Pinatubo. So that bandwidth there, the 19.5 latitude, matches where all the sunspots come out of the sun. 19.5, both north and south of the solar equator is where all the sunspots emerge from. That's where the big orange spot on Jupiter is on the 19.5 latitude of Jupiter. The largest volcano in the solar system on Mars is right on the 19.5 degree latitude. So it seems to be like a planetary structure, but I call it solar plexus because it has all that volcanic power coming out of it, that solar energy coming out of it. So, it's looking at the planet in that way. And, the crown chakra being the magnetic north and south, and the root chakra being the inner core of the planet. That's kind of how I look at the whole deal. But I've written articles on the Great Pyramid, did a study of that and found that it's projecting out some pretty noxious energies that seem to promulgate war and genocide.
The Great Pyramid.
Yeah. It's wow. It's kind of like a heresy, to say that the pyramids putting out bad.
Well, I don't think the pharaohs were known for their compassion and loving attitude.
Yeah, I think it's how we perceive it as a collective consciousness. So, the pyramid itself is, if you look at the pyramid, it's got this angle to it, and the sides are 51. But when you get up the top here, this angle here is 103.5 essentially, which is the bonding angle of water. So what the pyramid does is it connects with the biosphere. It bonds with the biosphere, and generates a field that gets transmitted through water. And right now with it, what I'm trying to get people to start looking at that as a solid water form, a form of sacred geometry, that's rather than, as a collective consciousness, we look at the Great Pyramid as this top-down economics and the church and everything, the pyramid of the royalty and the peons down below, and that whole thing, and the multi-level marketing. It's all part of that whole pyramidal ideal. So that might be that just the consciousness is being projected at it that's generating these struggles that where everybody wants to be on top, and they're all fighting to get up there instead of working for the collective good. But,
like the sacred circle, which is in a lot of indigenous cultures, a circle of equanimity, I guess we could say.
Yeah, one of the more glaring things here is that they talk about how it's the center and all these ley lines go together. And if you project the edges out of the Great Pyramid out, it really locks into the planet in a lot of different places. But if you take the southeast edge and extend that down, it goes right to the Kaaba stone in Mecca.
Wow.
So there's there's a dynamic loop between the two places. And that's, I don't know why nobody's noticed that, or why they've never noticed that it has the bonding angle of water to it, or it's just, and I'm a, what's going on
Peter,
here?
they didn't teach me that in my history or math class in high school.
No, they didn't. No, nor on Ancient Aliens did they teach that one.
Yeah, I know. Listening to you talk, I was like, geez, I'm very open-minded, and I do a lot of different, investigation of truths and stuff. But it is fascinating, like the whole thing of the Bosnian Sun Pyramid, the pyramids of Egypt, the Nazca lines. Like, obviously, then we go back to the time of Noah, where the earth was purified by water, and then there's the mythology that the earth has gone through multiple earth changes and all these things. But it is fascinating to be like, and I know Greg Braden talks about this a lot, and then people like Bruce Lipton. But the whole idea of like, there have been very advanced ancient civilizations that might have known more than we know right now, and
Yeah.
we consider ourselves arrogantly like the crown of creation. We have so much knowledge and technology, and then looking back at things like the concepts of Atlantis or Lemuria, or alien star beings, whatever. But it's really fascinating to know that what you're saying, that the planet has, I mean, we haven't even talked about any of that stuff, but that there is a intelligence to the planet and to these ley lines and the structure and its relationship to the universe. It's just really, it's fascinating and really undisputable, because it's a mixture of science and math and all these various things. Geology. I was just in Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and there's a part of the canyon where you can go. It's called the Painted Wall, and you can see 1.9 billion years of stone exposed and evolution. It's actually it's not quite the Grand Canyon, but it's pretty impressive. So we have to kind of like get out of the mainstream thinking and off the mainstream media stuff, and it's fascinating what's really out there if we kind of open our eyes to it and become aware. And again, kudos to you for bringing this to humanity's attention.
To kind of wrap this up, or wrap it up in a nice little bow for you, to the listeners, to carry away with them. It's like you mentioned Bruce Lipton and his research on the cell, that the nucleus doesn't really have much to do other than powering the cell, and all the work is done by the membrane. And in my, like, I found these earth rings everywhere, and it's like, okay, I can repeat the process as a science, if you will, and end up with a similar result anywhere on the planet. And I said, well, what are these rings? And on a cell's surface, there are all these things called integral membrane proteins, and they serve to transmit messages between the interior of the cell, what it needs or what it can give to the outside environment, and vice versa. So you have these various rings that are often geometric in form on the cell membrane surface. So as a metaphor, the Earth is really a cell, and that's what the conclusion was with Lovelock and Margulis in the Gaia hypothesis, is that it's like a single cell organism. So what I look at these earth rings as are integral membrane proteins, or integral membrane plutons, because that's a pluton. A pluton is a volcanic plug, or like a granite column at the center of all these earth rings, similar to like these integral membrane. So it's an integral membrane setup there, and what fuels, what runs this? It's human consciousness. So as we enter into a more sustainable future, I would suggest that these rings are foundation for our new Earth, where we start to grow as a species, and nest as a species within the matrix of our existing planetary form, and work with that, and work co-creatively with the planet. our consciousness, our electromagnetic fields, our ceremony, prayer, intention, all supports the planet's health and vitality. That's been done by indigenous societies forever, and the colonial period, or the transcendent period of Christian thought has kind of separated us from the planet as something evil. But instead of going with all these rectangles everywhere that just kind of block and deny Earth energies, these actually draw the vitality of the interior of the Earth up to the surface, and it draws down the light that's coming in from the cosmos into the Earth to feed the Earth. So that's I offer these rings for that, for a foundation for a sustainable future.
I love what you said about New Earth, because that's very much a big part of my work here in Crestone right now. And we're starting a center called the ARC, which I thought was fascinating when I saw ARC of Ontario, because it's the Academy for Regenerative Culture. And it's just a great place. It's already, the Tibetans say like this is kind of a mythical Shambhala here. Stupas and spiritual centers and the mountains and the lakes and everything, of course, the Continental Divide and, Wolf Creek Pass and all the hot springs. It's definitely very, I call it the ancient New Earth, because it's ancient land, but there's something happening here. And even as we're speaking, the thunder and lightning behind me, you can see I opened the curtain and it is just raining, pouring right now, just kind of cleansing everything. So very divinely synchronistic to everything. But again, a world of respect for you and your work. I'd love to get you out here at some point. I just want you to know, mi casa es su casa. So anytime you're out here, love to have you stop in and just getting reacquainted in any way I can help kind of champion your work and your message. I just, that seems to be what I'm being asked to do right now, as a media person and producer. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Michael.
If people wanted more information, is there a website or an email, or they can reach out to you?
Yeah, I have a really old style website that is, I apologize, it's in great need of upgrading, but it's called Geometry of Place, one word, geometryofplace.com. And you get links to getting my ebooks and paper books through there. And there's a bunch of articles that are available, and you can contact me at my name, Peter Champoux. It's CHAMPOUX, as in Xavier. So it's rock of the field is how that gets translated.
Wow.
So the field of the field, the quantum field, it's all about fields. So Peter Champoux at gmail.com is my contact number, and my phone number, if I'm always open to having conversations with most anybody. It's Vermont number 802-585-6021. So.
And you have some stuff on YouTube, I think, right? I've seen a couple of.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. Again, I think it's Geometry of Place is the name of the YouTube channel. There's some real old videos on there, and I haven't produced many new ones yet. But you can just Google my name, and there's a lot of blog, Zoom and blog talks that I've done over the years. And
fantastic.
There's just myself and some hockey player from Canada.
Well, I love where you are, because again, I lived in Western Mass for a while, of course, to Connecticut River, from Canada all the way to the Long Island Sound. Yeah. I used to do stuff at Temenos, where they have some of those old Druidic kind of beehive caves. Also, New Hampshire has a Stonehenge, their own Stonehenge there. Yeah, and love Vermont. It's great country. And again, thank you for taking some time with us, and we'll be in touch. And I want to thank any of our viewers for taking time to watch. This will be rebroadcast. It's a live recording, but we rebroadcast. And please reach out to Peter and help support his work and spread the word. Because like you said, we're on the ancient new earth, and all of us through the quantum field are becoming an active part of co-creating what our future will be. And this geomantic knowledge is, I mean, it's really priceless. It's ancient teachings for a modern society. So again, thank you so much.
Well said, Michael. Thank you.
I used to be a poet in Massachusetts. I can't. So, one of the tools. But again, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch. And again, everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Solutionaries. Have a great day, and be part of the solution.